Okay. Hello, everyone. I think we need to start. So first, we still have a little problem in setting up the casual competition platform. So, but we expect that by the end of this week, we'll share with you the link if you decided to. If you decide to take the exploratory project, I will share with you the link so that you can play with the data. And hopefully everybody was not bothered by the big snow yesterday. Okay. So last week we have introduced boosting algorithm, right? The first ensemble learning algorithm. More specifically, we introduced the EDA booster, the first very successful, very wide and popular ensemble learning methods. So the updating or the learning procedure of EDA booster is kind of sequential. You're going to construct a set of weak classifiers. So by weak classifiers, we mean that your prediction accuracy is just slightly better than a random classifiers, like you run through a coin. Right? And then in each round or each iteration, you train a weak classifiers, and according to the training error in this iteration, by the learned weight classifier, you're gonna upweight or downweight the samples, right? So on some mechanism to increase the weight and downweight the samples. So only increase the weight for the misclassified examples, right? For those examples which are incorrectly, which are correctly classified, we weight that's less important as in the current iteration. So we're gonna downweight. So in next iteration, we're training on a related data set. So again, next weight classifier. So then we'll continue to train until we finish a maximum number of iterations. We'll end up with a collection of weight classifiers, and then we'll combine them, use a weighted combination, right, or warp time. So that's a brief idea for the boosting method, right? And then at the end of the last lecture, we introduced another type of ensemble learning approach. It's called bagging. So the very important difference between bagging and boosting is that bagging is totally parallel. That means the training in a second iteration is totally independent from training of the first iteration. Because the training is basically randomly draw a subset of samples from the original training set. And the creation of the training set for each iteration is through uniformly sampling with replacement. So this is very important. So I want to ask, what does it mean for uniformly sampling with replacement? Did anyone can recall?
So when you sample something, when you put back the value, you say reverse.
Yes, exactly, right? So, I mean, intuitively, when we say, okay, we sample a bunch of examples from a set, we're going to do it like without replacement. That means when I got sample, I just threw it away, right? I cannot sample it again. But with replacement means that, okay, even example 1 is sampled. Now I put it back. So example 1 will have a chance to be sampled again. That means in each iteration, the set of sample examples for train, say your classifier, can be duplicated. Why? Because I can sample example 1 in the first time, right? And next time, the example 1 still has an equal chance to be sampled with all the other samples. So it's probably that sample 1 will be duplicated twice, right? So here's the example we mentioned in the last lecture, right? So we can see like the original we have like 5 distinct examples, training examples, right? But by using uniform sampling with replacement, we got like 3 subsets, right? And each subset is actually not subset, it's 3 sets. And each sample set contains like duplicated samples, right? X1, X2, or both X1 and X2. Right? So if we draw the number of the samples we draw uniformly with replacement from the original set is the same as the total size of the original training set, then this set we call it a bootstrap sample. So this is a concept from statistics. So see like quite a few non-parametric statistics and hypothesis testing based on bootstrap samples is doing this, like jackknife or whatever. If you haven't heard that, this doesn't matter. But if you have taken that course, you should have some impression on that. Basically, it's just try to construct a new data set out of the original data set. So this is the first step. So we can see that although we can repeat this iteration like for big T times, we do not necessarily execute in sequential, right? Because each iteration, the sampling for the training set is independent with each other, right? So you have a multi-cores, you have clusters, you can do it totally in parallel. That's the first difference, right? So what about the second difference?
Duplications.
What?
Duplications in the set.
Oh, duplications I will as in this training example sampling procedure, because we use uniform sampling with replacement. That means okay, in each iteration, the sampled examples we use to train a classifier can be duplicated, right? This is one difference from the ADA boosting or boosting algorithm. Boosting algorithm, remember, we have distinct samples, but we have different weights. Right? We have weights across all the different examples according to the prediction results by the current weight classifier, right? But here for the bagging, we actually have varying set of the training examples, but we don't have like sample weights. So this is from the training data we're gonna conduct our learning in each iteration. So what about the other difference? We actually mentioned it in the last lecture, but we do not specifically emphasize it.
Is it that you could have multiple types of learners?
And
Multiple different algorithms for your learners? With backend?
can you be more?
Like you could use trees as well as another kind of learning algorithm?
Oh yeah, but boosting and bagging, both they have in theory they have the flexibility to incorporate different. Yeah, but I think you're touching the point I want to emphasize. I just want to listen to the answer, the exact answer. Right? So basically, bagging does not have the constraints for weight classifiers. So remember when we talked about the boosting, right? We mentioned that boosting algorithms are actually restricted by the weight classifiers you choose, right? If the weight classifier is too weak, like even weaker than a random classifier, it won't work. But if weight classifier turns out to be strong, like much better than a random classifier, it won't work as well. So you have to carefully choose the weight classifiers. So in practice, people usually choose decision star. We mentioned that it's just one level decision trees. You just pick up one feature to do this data split. That's it. This is called decision stop, right? But for bagging, actually, we do not restrict. We do not require you to carefully pick up a weak classifier, which is just slightly better. Actually, we want you to pick up some complicated classifiers or complicated learners. Like if you want to use decision trees to construct your bagging learning, right? You want to train a bagging of decision trees, right? We actually do not want you to control the growth of decision trees. Actually, I want you to grow the decision trees to be as large as possible, as deep as possible, as wide as possible. So later we'll discuss why. So, but first let us review the general framework for bagging. So it's pretty straightforward. So we suppose we have a training set with m examples. We repeat for big T iterations. For each iteration, we draw m prime samples uniformly with replacement from the original training set. Then based on this m prime samples, we train a classifier with any strong classifier like unlimited decision trees, right? Using ID3 or whatever, right? And then after we have collected this big T classifiers, we construct the final classifier by taking the votes from each classifier. So taking the votes, that means like if you are doing regression, we simply take the average. Someone mentioned that we can also take median. That's a good idea, right? But the simplest approach is, the most straightforward is just to do the average. That's for regression, right? For classification, you just count, okay, how many classifiers predict this to be, the example to be a positive, how many negative, and you pick up the one with the biggest vote. Does it make sense? Okay, so we have mentioned that bagging actually, on both real and simulated data sets, on both classification, regression trees, and subset selection in linear regressions, they can give substantial gains in accuracy as compared with you just use one single decision tree or classifier or other classifiers. And and also we mentioned that the most popular bagging approaches are based upon decision trees. This is it's very similar to AWS boosting algorithms. So although in theory you can use whatever machine learning algorithm as some kind of base classifiers, right? Random classifiers, but the most popular choice of those base classifiers are decision trees. So then we call our bagging model as the baggy decision trees. So just use the template we have gone through, right? To train a baggy decision tree, we just draw T bootstrap sample sets of data. So to train decision trees, like we usually do the uniform sampling with replacement. We just draw the same number of samples as the original training set. So that's why we call it bootstrap sample. And then based on this bootstrap sample, we train a tree. And we do this for T times. Remember, this T iterations can be done totally in parallel because they're independent to each other. The samplings are independent to each other. And then we just average the prediction on those all of back decision trees. That's the baggy decision tree. So here's one example. If your decision tree is doing regression, you just take the average, right? And this is pseudocode. So yeah, I'm not gonna repeat this again. I think this is everybody feel comfortable with this, right? This is yeah. So now let us discuss let us discuss an important problem, right? So why bagging works? So as we mentioned, looks like this method is really simple. It's even a bit stupid, right? I just sample examples from the original training set, and for each set of sample examples, I train a different decision tree and just do the aggregation. That's it. This is bad. We do not need a fancy way to reweight the samples in each iteration, and we do not need to consider whether this base classifier to be should satisfy some kind of subtle conditions. We don't need to consider for that. Just pick a decision tree and random generate a bootstrap sample from the original training set, train decision tree, let it grow as much as you want. Then you have a collection of trees, you do the average. That's it. Then the question would be like, why this simple method works, right? So we briefly mentioned that, I mean, intuitively, we briefly mentioned why it works, right? So let me first give you a general idea on that, and then we'll give some justification in a more rigorous framework. So you can imagine that in the backend framework, we encourage you to use like complicated classifiers. If you do not control the growth of the tree, your tree can overfit your training set. And this is whatever how complex your training set or training samples are, it can perfectly fit your training set, right? This is the property of the decision trees. And we mentioned that it's kind of we mentioned that the overfitting of such kind of complicated decision trees can affect the generalization performance. Where does this overfitting come from?
Noise in the data.
Yes. Yeah, we mentioned that noise in the data, right? So basically, you can assume that if I just add a little bit noise into your training set, say I random perturb one particular training examples, your tree structures might be changed dramatically, right? So that means those different noises can lead to a big change of the trees and lead to a big change of a prediction. That means your variance of prediction is very large. That's the issue. But on the other hand, you can imagine because this tree is doing so well to fit your training set. If you put a lot of trees together, average them together, you expect that those noises effects can be averaged out, right? So that means if you can do the average, you can imagine, okay, it will be better, it will be closer to the ground truth. So that's the idea. So now let us look at a more rigorous framework. Right? So intuitively, when we combine or when we do the average of more predictors, we'll obtain more reliable or robust results. That is, we can cancel the variances caused by different noises. That's the key idea. So how can we justify it? So let us denote the training data by B, and suppose we have learned a predictor or hypothesis by our algorithm H. So this is our learned classifier, maybe our 20 liters decision trees, right? And we have some target function F. So now, this training, be aware that this training procedure has already finished. Has already been finished. Okay. So now we are given a new test example X star. This X star is fixed and constant, so we do not consider the randomness of this test example. We just assume, okay, I just randomly pick up a test example X star. It's in my hand. I want to say, okay, given this X star, what is the performance of the my learned classifier H? Can vary along with different set of training data. So remember, training data also determines the learned classifier, right? Different training data will lead to different decision trees of whatever classifiers. Right? So I want to say, and wait a second there. So I want to say, given some particular test example, how does the prediction performance of our learning algorithm, like decision tree, vary along with the training data? What kind of effects or what kind of properties determine the performance? Question?
I'm a little confused about something from earlier. So earlier, I think you said that you like pick when you create your sample test, you pick from them uniformly. But what if like the original distribution is not uniform?
No, we do not care about origin distribution.
You just pick uniform.
We just pick it uniform. So if it sounds weird, let me give you a little bit more in-depth explanation. This is called data distribution. Like because we do not know the original distribution of data, we only have a collection of the training set. We assume they are randomly, independently sampled from the original data distribution, right? And now we can construct a distribution which approximates original data distribution. This is called empirical distribution. So empirical distribution is what? It's just a uniform distribution over those training set examples. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a concept from the statistics, but it doesn't matter if you don't know that. So basically, you can imagine that if the original distribution says on this particular region there could be many examples. On this region there are scarce examples, right? It must be reflected in a collected training set. So even if you do the uniform sample on a training set, you're still gonna have more examples to be sampled in these high density regions.
I thought when you collect the uniform, every single observation was only accounted for once. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So it actually uses the training set as a surrogate to construct a surrogate for the original data distribution. So this is a concept called empirical distribution. So if you guys are interested, you can take a look at this ionic statistical book. But anyway, is everybody comfortable before we proceed? Okay, so now let us analyze the square error average over all possible training data. Namely, like I want to look at when I collect all kinds of training data, how is the square error of a prediction made by H look like, right? So this is essentially to compute the expectation of the square error, of the square difference between your ground truth fx star, right, and your prediction hx star with respect to the distribution of the data set, of the training set, right? So basically, I sample. You can imagine. I mean, an ideal of a mind experiment or mind computation for doing this is that I have some machine to generate a data distribution. Right? I get data distribution 1, I compute this error. Right? I get data distribution 2, I train my classifier to get another H to compute this error. Right? I average out all those errors. I got this expectation. Okay. So just the expected. I expected square error when we use all kinds of trained data to train our classifier to get say a decision tree. Is everyone comfortable? Any question? Any question on this part? Okay, so now let us do a statistics problem. Right? So we want to investigate this this expected square error made by my decision tree or whatever classifier. Right? So to do this, I'm gonna inside this difference, right? Inside this fx star, the ground truth subtracted by my prediction, the prediction made by my learned classifier, I subtract fx star by an expectation of my prediction plus the expectation of my prediction, and then subtracted by h of x star. So this is totally equivalent, right? Because I subtract one quantity and then add one quantity. They're just cancelled, right? But here we should be aware, we should know the meaning for this. So this just said, okay, the expectation of the prediction of my learned classifier. What does it mean? It means, okay, if I use dataset 1 to train a classifier, I have a prediction on X star, right? I sample another dataset, D2, to train a classifier, I got another prediction, right? So then this expectation just have on average, what is the prediction of my learner classifier using all kinds of training sets. Does it make sense? Is everybody comfortable? Okay. If you have any problem, just let me know. This is just some small trick to do to analyze this square error, right? So now inside this square, we subtract by some expectation and plus by some expectation. Then based on this, we can expand this square term. How can we do that? We take the square of the first subtraction, right? We take the square of the second subtraction, and we multiply the cross term, which is this one multiplied with this one, right? So just to expand the square, a plus b take square. Okay. You have like a square here, b square here, and cross term, and a and b, right? Does it make sense? Right. So now let us look at the cross term first. Right? So what's the value of this cross term? Any guess?
Question?
What about what is the value of this cross term? The cross product of this subtraction, this subtraction. Right?
Zero.
Yeah.
They are independent.
Yeah. So this is a very common user trick in statistics. Okay. Why? We can take a look at, right? So we have to the cross term means that I have to multiply this term with this term, like two subtraction, right? So we multiply fx star minus expectation of hx star with expectation of hx star subtracted by hx star, right? Of course, because there's an expectation outside, so I'm taking expectation outside of this product, right? So first, this part is constant, right? Because h is only determined by the training set D, right? So this part is constant. And now fx star is constant. Right? Because f star is given and the target function is 0, so the ground truth is fixed, right? And the expectation, again, the expectation of hx star is constant as well, right? So this first term, this first subtraction is actually a constant. So you can move it out from this expectation, right? So the remaining thing is that you take expectation over this expectation subtracted of hx star, right? So what's the value? It's simply 0, right? Because if you take expectation over this one is constant, right? So you take expectation over this, or expectation subtracted by expectation, simply 0. Does it make sense? Yeah, if you feel like still feel a bit unclear, you can try to derive it by yourself. You just verify by pen. You'll know it. Okay, so we see that the cross term simply is 1, right? So now we can say actually the expected square error actually is determined by two expectations. The first expectation is this term here, right? We just move here. So it is expectation of the ground truth subtracted by the expectation of output and take square. So shall we take expectation here? Is it necessary to take the expectation here? No, right? Because fx star, as we mentioned, right, its ground truth label is fixed. It's not random. And this part is I haven't taken expectation of the my learn classifier's output. So it's constant, right? So so this total square is constant. If you take expectation of constant is itself, right? So it's simply fx star subtracted by the expectation of my classifier's output, then take square, right? And what about the second term? So the second term, if we move here, right? So this is the definition of variance. Remember, what is definition of variance? Right? It's the square. It's the expectation of a square difference between the random variable and the random variable's expectation. I mean, it's on average how far away you jump from your mean, right? From your expectation. But you have to take square. So this is the definition of variance. Any questions so far? Everybody feels comfortable? Or is this too straightforward? Okay. So now we come to a very meaningful decomposition. This is a very well-known decomposition. It's called the bias-variance trade-off. The first term, which is the square difference between your ground truth and your expected prediction, is called bias. So basically, it means on average how far away your learned classifier's prediction is from the ground truth, right? So the second term, obviously, is variance, right? But I can say the second term actually has nothing to do with the ground truth label. It's not determined by fx star. It's only determined by how you learn the classifier. It only determines the nature of the learning algorithm. So all the machine learning algorithms' performance actually is kind of trade-off between this biased variance. How to see that? Usually, the more complex the learning model pick up, or the learning algorithm pick up, the smaller the bias. But in the meantime, the larger the variance. Why?
So those bias maybe means more case complicated of the model.
Yes. Right. We mentioned, right? Let us just use decision tree again as an example, right? So you do not control the growth of decision trees. That means the decision tree can fit the training data as good as possible, right? So that means the variance of your decision tree's output can be large. Why? Because of overfit, right? You just perturbate a bit, or just randomly change some feature values or example or the label of the training examples. It will dramatically change your tree structures. Why? Because the goal of this tree is to perfectly fit every training set, right? So to achieve this goal, you have to grow in whatever ways to do that, right? That means your prediction can vary a lot. Different data set can end up with being very different structure of trees, which implies very different outputs, very different prediction. But in the meantime, what about their bias? So remember, bias computes the difference between your ground truth and the expected prediction. So expected means that, okay, I use all kinds of training set to train my classifiers. Right? For each particular training set, I got like complicated trees, I get one prediction. For another training set, I give I train another complicated tree, so I get prediction, right? And then I average together. So remember, decision tree is so good to, or whatever other complicated classifier is so good to overfit to the training data, to fit training data, right? When you have seen all kinds of training set, the average prediction you can expect is to be pretty low. Then we'll have a lower bias. Does it make sense? Right? Of course, for a particular classifier or decision tree, like train a particular data set, you cannot expect, okay, the performance is good, right? But if you let the decision tree to look at all possible training set, that is, we take expectation here, you can imagine because it's fit data so well, you go through all the set, you fit all the set, that means, okay, your performance, your prediction error for the future training set, future test example will be small, right? But at the same time, because your tree construction procedure is so complicated, the variance is large. So you can see the difference. You can see the trade-off here. Right? On the contrary, what if you choose a simple classifier, a simple machine learning model? Like I use a line to do a classification. How about variance of your prediction?
The variance is so small, but the bias is so big.
Yes. It behaves like in an opposite way, right? So if you use a simpler model, that means okay, because usually that means your hypothesis space is pretty small. That means okay, no matter what kind of classifier or hypothesis you're choosing from this family, the prediction is okay. In this range, it's not very large. But at the same time, because this range is so small, they are always like quite different from the ground truth, right? So imagine our expectation is still quite far away from the ground truth. So that means a large bias. So you can see the trade-off between the bias and the variance. Does it make sense?
I'm confused about one of the variables. Like, what is the expectation of h of x mean exactly again? Can you just...
Okay, this is a key point. I need to emphasize again. So expectation is under the training set to obtain h. So we still take h as a decision tree, like you have your ID3 in your hand, right? So you can imagine your learned decision tree is dependent on the specific set of training data you get, right? So the training data are random variables. So expectation means that, okay, I just enumerate all possible, I just sample all possible training set. For each training set, I run an ID3, I got a decision tree, I got a prediction, right? And I average out all those predictions, I got expectation of my prediction. So the prediction is under the distribution of the training data. Does it make sense? Any other question? That's why we mentioned that why like complicated classifiers tends to have a small bias. Why? Because expectation just means okay, I draw all possible training set to train my complicated classifiers. On each data set, my complicated classifiers is doing well, right? On expectation, when I have seen all possible training sets, I take their average. Obviously, it will do well. It will do well in predicting future examples because future examples is generated from the entire data distribution, right? But if you use a simple classifier, you can imagine, okay, for each particular training set you draw from the data distribution, it doesn't perform, it doesn't fit very well. So in each specific case, it doesn't work very well. You take average, it doesn't work as well. So this decomposition tells us, actually, I mean, there's no free lunch, right? If you choose complex models, you choose 100-layer artificial neural nets, well, you'll perfectly fit to the training data. But at the same time, because the complex nature of the learning algorithm, the variance is large. If you choose simple models, simple algorithms that look silly, but your variance is much smaller. although your bias is quite large. So average, you still get reasonable good performance.
Which one is preferable? Do you prefer to increase the variance or decrease?
There's no like true. I mean, some specific guideline for you to do that. Actually, people are. This is dependent on your applications. Sometimes like trade-off is here is good. Sometimes trade-off here is good. It really depends. But we should know there is a trade-off here. So a decision tree tends to overfit, so has a small bias but a large variance. So now we can see why backing works. Why when we train a set of complex decision trees and do the average, it will improve performance. So you can imagine like each complex tree has a small bias, right? Has small this term. This term is small because your tree is complicated, it's large, right? And take the average of those trees, their bias is still small, right? Take average, you take expectation of the average of set random variables, the expectation does not change if those variables are independent, identically distributed, right? This is a basic fact from the statistics. But what about the variance? What about variance? When I average the prediction of a set of decision trees. So I have a decision tree, H1, H2, H3, and H4, right? Each has its own variance, right? Now I come out with a second classifier, which is average of these four decision trees, H1, H2, H3, and H4. What about this variance of this average decision tree classifier? From our statistical knowledge, right? You have x1, x2, x3, x4 random variables. Suppose they are IID. So what about the variance of x1 plus x2 plus 3 plus 4 over 4? What's the change of variance? It reduces a lot, right? I mean, if we consider the ideal case, suppose those random variables are independent, identical distribution, right? So if I have an average of 10 random variables, what's the variance of this averaged random variables? 1/10, right? If you calculate the variance, that's it, right? So same computation is applied here, right? If you have a set of decision trees, they are learned by the same algorithm, right? But they are trained on different training sets. You can imagine that those training sets are IID, right? We use uniform sampling with replacement. Those four training sets are IID. So the learned classifier can be seen as some function of this training set, right? So they are IID. If you take the average of that, you can imagine the variance can be reduced a lot, right? So now you can see, if we take the average of set of trees, the bias doesn't change. Why? Because the expectation of an average of set of random variables does not change. But the variance reduces a lot. That means what? Means, okay, I keep the bias term, but I reduce the variance term. The overall square error is decreased, right? That's why the idea of backing works. Does it make sense? So backing averages a set of decision trees to maintain similar bias, but largely reduce the variance. So this is the reason why backing works. And also this is the reason why we tend to use complicated classifiers. Why? Because once I choose complicated classifiers, my bias term is in general small. And then I do the average, I further reduce the variance term. So I got small variance term, I got small variance term. When I add them together, I got small square error, right? So someone asks, okay, you're talking about in the square error metric, right? What if I do not use square error? Because I'm more interested in binary classification, right? Do we have like similar kind of bias variance decomposition? And the answer is yes. But we're not going to talk about that. So for the other types of errors, say 0, 1 error, we have a similar bias variance decomposition that can be derived, and you can see this pioneer paper published in 2000 titled Domingos in AAAI. If you're interested, you can take a look. So that basically reviews the same kind of trade-off.
Expectation you use for weights of existor is over hypothesis space, all possible weights.
No, expectation is over the data distribution. Your search is always going through the entire hypothesis space. This is determined by algorithm, right? But the search result is dependent on the training set you use there. So the training set is random variable. You can expect your learned classifier, or learned decision trees is random as well. I'm gonna just take expectation of the prediction made by your learned classifier under all kinds of training set. Does it make sense?
Does this mean that it's always the case that the more learners, the better, and there's no like point at which it gets worse if you add more learners?
That's very good. That's a very good point. So actually, there's no free lunch. As I just mentioned to you, right? So the variance, when the variance can be reduced most, you're gonna assume like each learned decision trees are independent to each other, right?
Okay.
But do we really have independent decision trees? Intuitively, no, right? But can I explain why?
Well, each one is based off of some subset of the training examples, right? So eventually, if you make enough of them, you're eventually going to get some that have almost the exact same set, or even just the same set of training examples.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine? Because we are only working on a given fixed training set, right? We cannot like every time just random pick another training set. I just have one training set, and I use a uniform with replacement strategy to generate each training set. Actually, different training sets severely overlap. So the learned classifiers are essentially not independent to each other. So if you do the average over a set of correlated random variables, their variance reduction is not as that big as you imagine. I imagine we can take an extreme case like I have x1, 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 4 x1s. They are exactly the same. You take the average, it does not change any variance. Your variance remains there. So in practice, it's never been possible that you can use infinite number of the base classifiers to reduce the variance to be almost 0. It's not possible. So, as to the point you mentioned, right? So in practice, one way to improve the bagged decision trees is how to reduce variance. And one key point, one key strategy to reduce variance is that how can I reduce the independence between different trees? Right? That comes to the random forest. So the biggest difference between the random forest and bagged trees, I mean the vanilla bagged trees, is that in addition to draw a bootstrap sample of the data, I'm also trying to draw a subset of available attributes at each split. That means during the construction of each tree, I'm trying to avoid their feature, and I mean the tree nodes to have overlapping features as much as possible. Say I want my tree 1 to generated by splitting with feature 1, 2, 3. I want my tree 2 to be generated with splitting features to be a totally different set of features. In this way, we can reduce the correlation between different decision trees. Does it make sense? Okay. So here is the pseudocode to learn random forest. Right. So our next homework, you're required to implement your own random forest. So be careful of this pseudocode, and especially those details, right? Okay. So given the training set with M examples and feature set F, so here we should pay attention to the feature set F from which we select features to split the data and construct trees, right? So we repeat, like say big T iterations. In each iteration, I'm going to draw M examples uniformly with replacement from the training set, namely Bootstrap Sample, right? Denoted by XT and YT. This is the same step we mentioned before, right? And then we call this procedure is called random tree learn algorithm to learn decision tree CT from XT and YT. And again, I mean during calling of this random tree learn algorithm, we do not use any pruning or depth and width control. And then let us look at and suppose we have finished those big T iterations. I have T decision trees, and then I do the vote on average for classification and regression respectively. So this framework are exactly the same as the general backend framework. So the key difference lies in the random tree learn, this procedure, right? So let us look at what is the random tree learn procedure, right? So random tree learn take into account both the training input and output as well as the feature set from which we select the features to split nodes and construct trees, right? So at each node, I'm not going to search over all the feature set to select the best feature, say according to information gain or gene indexing, whatever, to do the split. Instead, I first randomly sample a very small subset of F, denoted by G. So size of G is much less than size of F. And then I select the best feature in G to perform the split with whatever gain you want. That's the key idea. So suppose like you have 100 features, right? So in iteration 1, you might pick up a very small set of 10 features of the 100, right? You construct a tree, use your ID3. You can go whatever you want, right? But in the next iteration, I very probably select another totally different 10 features to do the split and construct another tree, right? I do it again and again until I construct all the big T trees and do the back prediction. So this is a key idea. Mm-hmm.
So when you're taking these random samples of the features, you're doing that without replacement?
There's no restriction on that. But yeah, but you cannot do result because you cannot duplicate. Yeah. I mean, for sample G, it must be with result replacement because G cannot have duplicate features, right? It's not meaning to that. But next time we will sample another G to construct another tree. Well, the features which were previous used can be used again. So from the G level, yeah, it can be sampled with replacement. But again, the strategy to sample a small set of F to obtain this G feature to construct your own tree in this iteration is flexible. And most common use is just sample with replacement.
What is very small?
It depends on how you define it. So there's no exact number you can restriction on how many subset of features you're going to use. You can imagine like it's just relatively much less than the original number of features. That's it. You have like 110, very small. Or 20 is good, but 50 might be problematic.
The sample size must be equivalent term.
Oh, you mean here?
No, at the rand tree length for G size.
G size, okay.
In every step, sample size
Is encouraged to be much smaller than the whole set of features available. Again, why? Why we're doing this? Because we want those learned decision trees to be as uncorrelated as possible. Like you can imagine if we do not have such kind of restriction, what do we have? Like suppose I have a few features which are very, very informative. Right? No matter how you draw Bootstrap sample out from the training data, they're always being selected in the first time, second time, third time. That means okay, all the tree structures are the same.
How many times you want to do that procedure? For example, for 100 examples, you say, for example, 10 is okay. So you want to do this procedure 10 times? Or
You mean the selection of T? It depends. Again, this is some parameter you need to tune.
it shows the number of G's we want to choose?
You mean T or G?
Yeah.
So the number of G's is dependent on the number of T, right? So if you want to train 10 classifiers, right? So you're gonna sample like 10 G set, right? Each subset of features is used to construct your tree for this Bootstrap sample.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding. So with one instance of the random tree learner, there's not just one G that it uses to build the entire tree. It chooses a different set of G every time it splits. Is that right?
Yeah.
At each node?
Yeah.
So after this is the attributes, right? The subset of attributes that it's using.
F is the entire,
All of the attributes.
all of the attributes. That's why every time just the subset, it's just a sample subset.
So let's say you've you're maybe halfway down your tree, you've already split on some number of attributes. Do you exclude those when you sample your subset? Because you've already split?
Yeah, of course you have to actually. If you have overlapping, you cannot use that because this feature value are the same. You cannot do the split. So basically, yeah, to be more rigorous, when you sample this G, right, you have to exclude the features which you have used before. But you can imagine because it's a very small subset of F. So it's unlikely that your G will meet those features you have used before. But in your implementation, do be careful. You have to do this step.
So wait, to be clear, are you relying on the probability that you're colliding with one you've already split on, or you are splitting on subsets of F subtracted from the attributes we've already split on?
Yeah.
So the second.
Yeah, probably I should ask you guys to revise this pseudocode to be a little bit more robust, that you have to subtract all the previous features that have already been selected and do the selection. But usually it can be done in two ways. First, I just exclude all the possible features that are already selected, then I sample G. Right? Or I just sample G, and then when I select, I just get rid of those features which happen to be used before. So it's up to you in a implementation. Any question regarding the random forest construction procedure? Is everybody comfortable? Okay, so let me emphasize again.
If we only support that small subset, does this make the fires looking large?
It's not necessary because, as I just mentioned, like, there's no need to prolong or limit the depth in Y, right?
Oh,
You can, well, from heuristic, from the greedy heuristic, well, it might limit the advantage of the greedy heuristic, like in ID3, right? Because we just use a very small candidate feature set to rank an information game, right? But right now we release the restriction. You can grow the tree as large as you can. That means eventually you're gonna still very well fit to the training data.
But remember, the subset still limit the components.
The subset of what?
But if the subset is too small, then you limit the performance of fires.
Oh, if the subset is very small, you can imagine that if you use original ID3, right? Every time I use a full set to do that, you can imagine like after only a few steps, the tree has been constructed and very well fit to the training set. That's it, right? But now every time I restrict the number of features to be selected is very small. That means I have to grow many more times than just using the plain ID3. But eventually, remember the stopping criteria of ID3 is that you have to say all the nodes have the pure labels, right? So you still overfit data, but with a much larger tree. But doesn't matter because it overfits the training data means that okay, it has a small bias. It just has a large variance. But right now we train a lot of such kind of trees. We do the average, we reduce the variance.
Is there a rule of thumb on how big you choose to be in comparison to the
The rule of thumb. Yeah. Those are parameters you have to tune in your training set, like big T, right? But usually, you are not encouraged to train 1,000 trees. That won't help too much. And also, the size of G is relatively small. If you just said, okay, every time just choose 2 features out of it, it won't be working well as well, right? So this is kind of rule of thumb or some empirical experience really dependent on the specific applications, and you need to play with those parameters and pick up the settings which give you the best empirical performance.
So I'm a little bit confused on the notation used to denote each bootstrap sample. So you're denoting them like x of t, comma y of t. But I'm confused why are you using like a pair? Why not just like x of t? Like
X and t are inputs, right? Y, t are labels.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you have to combine the labels and inputs together to compute the.
Yeah. Okay, no, I get it.
Okay. Any other question regarding the? So it looks everybody is comfortable with the details, right? Just have no sense about like what setup of T and whatever this, right? So you're gonna have a good chance to tune that. You have a feeling of that. Without feeling, well, I cannot give you the answer. If I was asked to implement such a random forest tree, I have to tune those parameters by myself as well. Okay. So now we have finished this topic, ensemble learning. So to summarize what I'm saying, first the idea of boosting, right? So the boosting was motivated by theoretical computational learning theory from that weak learnability implies strong learnability, and then motivated by this theoretical problem, people developed the practical algorithm called AWS. Is very widely used, very successful algorithm, right? So we talk about the iteration, we talk about the algorithmic details. How do we how do we downweight and upweight the weights according to the performance of each weight classifier, right? And how do we compute the weighted training error? How to compute the final weight for each weight learner, right? So the final hypothesis or final classifier is simply a linear combination of your learned weight classifier in each iteration. This is AWS. And then we talk about bagging. Bagging sounds even simpler to AWS because we do not invent any strategy to repeat samples. We just randomly sample training examples each iteration and train a classifier and do a simple average, right? But the reason why bagging works is actually based on the fact the bias the variance decomposition. So bagging usually maintain the small bias of the complicated classifiers, but by doing average, you can reduce the variance term. So overall, you can reduce the whole error. This is basically this whole idea of the bagging. But in practice, because the training examples are overlapping, right? You're doing Bootstrap, that means there are a lot of duplicated examples across different training iterations. So we cannot obtain really independent classifiers. So how can we decorrelate those learned classifiers? Yeah, pick the subset in constructing the trainers and branches to let the collection of trees to be as dissimilar as possible, as uncorrelated as possible. In that way, we can reduce our variance to be as much as possible. Right? That's okay idea. Any questions so far?
So I'm just curious, the bagging is better than the
No, I cannot answer such kind of question. I can only give you a general description. I can tell you, okay, AWS works very well in blah blah blah, and bagging works very well in blah blah blah. But I cannot say, okay, AWS is better than bagging, or bagging is better than AWS. There's no guarantee on that. There's no guarantee that the neural network is better than decision trees as well. Actually, I can find 100 applications neural network is well defeated by decision trees. So I can only provide a set of models, and each model have some kind of advantages, disadvantages, and for you to choose. And how to better choose that, you need to know the idea.
So instead of like taking random subsets of your features, is it just like too like computationally intensive to maybe calculate like all combinations and then just take the subsets and use like covariances?
Yeah. If you're doing that, I mean, it's very fancy. But in practice, people always choose a trade-off between your, between your efficiency and also the effect, right? So maybe your method, like I found a way to estimate the correlations between the features and pick up the set which is least correlations to the existing. Yeah, that would be the best. But the computation cost will be large. So that's why people like even choose just blindly random sample that. Use this way to decorrelate. Any other question? Okay, so we have finished this topic. So So our next topic will be a large class of the machine learning models called linear models. So linear model is so fundamental, so popular. So don't look down upon this type of models because the word linear. Actually, from linear model, we can construct very highly nonlinear classifiers and regressions. Linear model just means, okay, there is some kind of linear structure into that. And those linear structure can make the training procedure very effective, very convenient. But it by no means imply that your model simply can only capture linear relationships. But of course, we're going to study with a simple linear relationship, and then we'll see how we extend them to capture nonlinear mappings and functions in data. Okay. So before we talk about linear classifiers, let's just stop for a while and look at the general picture. Every time we need to, when we dive into some specific topic, then we should look back and say, okay, in our knowledge hierarchy, what kind of new things are added, right? What is our structure, right? So again, we're still discussing things within the range of within the domain of supervised learning, right? So in the supervised learning, we have three important ingredients. First, instance space, right? And second, label space, and third, hypothetical space, right? So instance space consists of all possible instances you want to predict. And label space are the target labels. And we assume that there is a mapping from instance space to the label space. This mapping we call ground truth. And then our learning algorithm is essentially a search procedure over the hypothesis space to find out a hypothesis which can be as close to the ground truth hypothesis or ground truth target function as possible. So how do we conduct the learning procedure? We must give our learning algorithm an input. The input are just labeled training data, right? So the training data is going to guide the learning algorithm to find out the best hypothesis to approximate the ground truth. And once we have our learned model or hypothesis in hand, we can feed our learned hypothesis a new test example from which we can obtain our prediction. So this is a whole supervised learning framework and protocol. So we have we know we know there are many specific learners in the supervised learning framework, and we have seen quite a few of them from decision trees, like decision trees, either boost and baggage trees and random forest. Those belong to the ensemble learning approaches. But again, they are supervised learning approaches, so don't be confused. And also, we talk about general concepts, overfitting, feature representations, right? So up to now, are there any questions? It's just a boring review, right? So now, again, linear models and linear classifiers are within this supervised learning framework as well. So what are we talking about? What are we going to talk about the linear models, right? So we'll start with linear classifiers. And then we'll discuss what kind of functions do linear classifiers express. So namely, how powerful, how expressive the linear models can do. And then we'll talk about a least square method for regression. So basically, if you want to do the regression task, how are we going to train a linear model to do that? It's called least square method. If you have taken some statistics course before, you might have been familiar with this method. Okay, so first, what are linear classifiers? So we're going to introduce the definition and the geometry of linear classifiers, and also the notation simplification, right? How we pull the bias term into the feature vector. So let us look at a concrete example. So suppose this is our training set. We have positive labels and negative labels, right? Blue circles and red triangles, right? So now I want to learn a classifier to separate the positive examples from negative examples. A question would be like, what kind of classifier do you have? You want to use? Linear. Why? Yeah, but But I mean, on the first side, I wouldn't use linear, because if I use linear, I would not be able to perfectly fit the training data, right? I always have some misfitting. Why? Because if I choose this much vivid and smoother curve, right, I can perfectly separate every positive examples from negative examples. But if I use linear classifier, I just draw a line. Right? So you can say, okay, on the boundary we have some kind of misfit, misclassified training examples, right? So now I want to ask if you are asked to make a choice. Right? You are required to make a choice. So which classifier would you like to adopt? This smooth curve A or straight line B? Why?
Because the implementation is much easier.
The notation is much easier. Well, yeah, this is one reason. It's definitely a reasonable idea. Yeah. Any other comment?
The curve A overfits the data and grasp you get the noise out of it.
Okay.
Prediction it will not work.
Okay. Yeah. So I would prefer more from this aspect, although your thought is good as well, right? So the problem, as we mentioned, as we emphasized previously, right? So this curve is so vivid, right? It fits the data so well. But what if this data is not perfect? Your classifier is perfect, but your data is not perfect. What about this perturbation? I mean, this right triangles or these kind of blue circles are just some original examples corrupted by some random noises. So they flipped their labels got flipped, or their positions got flipped. If such kind of things happen, you can imagine that curve A won't give you a very good performance. It will be bothered by such kind of noises. Right? To give you an example, right? So say these two examples, right? So suppose, okay, this red triangle is originally labeled really blue, but due to some noises, now it is it was flipped to be red triangle. And again, this part, this blue circle, originally it is red, but due to some noises, it corrupted to be the blue. Right? Then if you use this beautiful curve to fit all the training set, you say, okay, when I have another test examples here and here, well, my curve for both examples, my curve will make wrong mistakes, or make wrong prediction, right? But what about our linear classifier? The small perturbation in this boundary actually does not affect the linear classifier, right? Although, okay, I know these samples are just corrupted training samples by some random noises, right? But when I train a linear classifier, it's still there. The boundary does not change. So when I have like new test examples, right, uncorrupted test example here and here, my classifier gives a correct prediction. So now we'll have like a concrete sense about the benefit to avoid overfitting, right? So similar things happen for the regression, right? So suppose this is my training set. The y values, the output are continuous values, right? So I can choose to use, say, a polynomial, right, a curve, which perfectly fit every training set, right? Which goes through every training data point, right? It sounds looks good, but instead, if I use a line, I cannot perfectly fit every training set, right? But the benefit is that when those examples are corrupted by some noises, right? Say these points might be just some noises. It's supposed to be here and here, right? But due to some noises, it was stretched here, and it was pulled up here. And then if next the test examples stay here, right? So if you use this overfitted curve, you can imagine your test error is large, right? But if you use line, the test error is much smaller. That's the benefit of linear models to do the regression and classification. So actually, in many cases, the first choice of people are using linear models. Logistic regression, linear regression. Want to first say, okay, whether this works. If it works, okay, we're done. And our second choice would be to build more complicated examples to burn GPUs. Okay, so let us continue with linear classifier on Thursday. Yes, I think you need to be careful on the data usage. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's perfect. So I was wondering, is it possible